Hey guys, welcome to Percentages Day 2. Yesterday you learned how to change fractions into percents using two different methods. We're going to review a little bit of that today, but we're going to today learn how to change a percent into a fraction, so we'll be going the opposite direction. We're going to learn how to change a decimal into percent and learn how to change a percent into a decimal. All right, so just a little review to start off with. Hopefully you guys remember from yesterday that percent is just basically like a combination of two terms that you already know, per, and then which means divide, and then cent, which means 100. So percent literally means per 100. So hopefully you remember this from yesterday. So if we were to write 42 out of 100, we could write it three different ways. We could write it as a fraction, 42 hundredths, as a decimal, also read as 42 hundredths, or in a percentage, 42%. Let's practice that now with 9 out of 100. If we write that as a fraction, we have 9 out of 100, there's my out of, or 9 100ths. In a decimal, also 9 100ths, or in a percentage as 9%. Okay, just a little review on our method 1 and method 2 that we learned yesterday for changing a fraction to a percent. So let's take 2 25ths right now. If we use method 1, our goal is to get that denominator to 100. So we're going to multiply 2 25ths by 4 over 4. If we multiply the numerators, we get 8, so 2 times 4 is 8. We multiply the denominator, 25 times 4 equals 100. Remember guys, when we're multiplying fractions, we just multiply straight across, numerator and denominator. Method 2 is going to be multiplying by 100 over 1. I forgot to finish off that method 1 up there. Sorry guys, it was 8%. So hopefully you guys all recognize that. But method 2, we're going to multiply 3/8. Now we're going to convert this to a percent. We're going to multiply it by 100 over 1. If we multiply the numerators, 3 times 100, we get 300. The denominators, 8 times 1 equals 8. You don't have to add those, but I'm just doing that to help remind you of how we multiply fractions. And with method 2, we just want to simplify. So if we divide 300 by 8, we would get 37.5% or 37.5%. Let's just make sure that we know what we're doing. So 300 divided by 8, 8 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. 30 minus 24 is 6. I'm going to bring down that 0. 8 goes into 6 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Ooh, we're going to need another 0, aren't we? And 60 minus 56 is 4. Now we're going to bring down another 0. Notice that I added a decimal right there. I can't just add zeros and make 300 and 3,000 because that wouldn't be cool. But let's bring down that other 0, and now I have 40 divided by 8, which is 5. So there's where my 37.5% comes from. Okay, let's move on. So now if we want to change from a percent to a fraction, we are going to put the percent amount out of or over 100 and then simplify. This is just the opposite of what you guys have been doing with changing a fraction to percent. So for example, if we have 15%, so this top example here, we're going to write our 15. We're going to put it over 100 because remember, percents are a special fraction with 100 in the denominator. And then we could simplify that. Okay, so if we want to just change this to a fraction, again, 15% would equal 15 over 100. And then if we simplify that, we're going to divide both by 5, right? Then we would get 3/20. Let's try 8%. We're going to first put that 8 over 100 because the 8% means 8 hundredths, right? So 8 over 100, and then we simplify, divide both by 4, and we're going to get 2 25ths. And let's take a look at that 50%. We put 50 over 100. we simplify, divide both the numerator and the denominator by 50, and we're going to get 1 in the numerator and 2 in the denominator. Oops. Okay, go on and do the rest on your sheet if you have that in front of you, and come back and check your work on the next slide. Okay, here we have 44%, 125%, and 385%. Now that one's unique, so let's talk about that in a second. But 44%, we've got 44 over 100. If we reduce that by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 4, we get 11/25. 125%. Oh, that one's unique too. Look at that. Okay, so in these last two, we've got percentages that are greater than 100%, right? So that's really like bigger than a whole, which is kind of weird. So those actually are going to give us improper fractions, right? Because an improper fraction is a fraction greater than 1. So we still do the same thing, though. It's the same process. So 125% becomes 125 over 100. That's what I have right here. And if we reduce that and divide both by 25, we're going to get 5/4. We could even simplify that further, couldn't we? And we would get 1 and 1/4. And 385% now is going to be a percentage much bigger than our original 100% whole. So we put 385 over 100. And if we simplify that, we're going to get 77/20. So we divided both by 5 there. And we get 77/20. And we could even simplify that further, and we would get 3 and 17/20. How I got that, in case anybody's struggling to see that, is I pulled out 60/20, right? Because that's the biggest. 60 would be the biggest multiple of 20 that I can get before going over 77. And then if I pull out 60/20, that leaves me with 17/20, and that 60/20 then can change to 3 wholes plus 17/20. Okay, now let's change from a decimal to a percent. So when changing from a decimal to a percentage, we're going to multiply the number by 100. And when we multiply a number by 100, all that means is that we are going to move the decimal 2 places to the right. For example, I have 45/100. And so when I multiply that by 100, I'm just moving the decimal place over 2 places to the right. In fact, if I were to multiply that, for every time I multiply by a 10, I'm moving the decimal place 1 place to the right. Hopefully you guys remember this from metric conversions at the beginning of the year. So every time I multiply by 10, I move over 1 place to the right. And if you have trouble remembering that at all, just think about, if you're multiplying, you're going to make a number that's bigger, right? So you are going to always move it over the direction that makes it bigger. If you were dividing, you would be making a number that's smaller, so you'd be moving the decimal place to the left. All right. If we're going to change from a percent to a decimal, we're going to put the percent amount out of or over 100, or move the decimal place at 2 places to the left. All right, for example, I have 3% there, right? And I changed that to 3 over 100, so I just put my percent amount over 100, so there's my fraction. If I want to change it to a decimal, I'm going to take that 3, and I'm going to, right now the decimal place is right there, isn't it? Because it's a whole number. I'm going to move that over 2 places to the left. So 1, oh, clearly I need to add a 0 there, right? And 2. So it becomes 0.03. All right, so do this on your own and then look back up to the slide to make sure that you were right. But we're going to express each percentage as a decimal. If it helps you to express it as a fraction first, that's fair game. Expressing the percentages as fractions helps us to see that it is some numerator over a denominator of 100. Okay, so like on this first one that I have here, I have 35/100ths. So you can see that as a fraction, and you can see that as the same thing as a decimal. But if I were to do this just as a percentage straight to the decimal, I'd start with my decimal over there, and then I would move my decimal place 2 places to the left. Okay, on my second example, I have 10%, so I'm going to write the 10. My decimal place starts there, move it 2 places to the left, and I end up with 0.1 or 10 hundredths. 8%, my decimal place starts here, and there we go. If I move it 2 places to the left, there's 1 place. Now look, I need to add a 0, don't I? So there we go. We end up with 0.08 or 8 100ths. Okay, there are some more for you. So do that on your own paper before you check your work. So 99.5%. We do the same thing. Let's see how we did that. There's my decimal place. I want to move it 2 places to the left. And I end up with, let's write that so it's a little bit clearer, but I end up with 995 thousandths, 182%. My decimal starts there. I move over 2 places to the left, and I get 1 and 82 hundredths. 14.25%. Do the same thing. Move my decimal place over 2 places to the left, and I end up with 0.1425 or 1,425 10,000ths. Okay, your homework for this evening is workbook exercise 16, and it's more of what we just did.